Okay, gonna try something a little bit different here to try to directly help some small businesses. It's just free advice. Feel free to reach out to me for anything specific to your small business. But I thought I would go into a little bit of detail as to what it takes to decide when to stay open and when to decide to shut down your small business. Adjust the camera here for a little second here. As you can see, everybody hears small business, they think profit, profit, profit. Businesses have a limited impact on their own revenue stream. Profit is total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue is price times quantity. It's what you charge for your good or service times how many goods you actually sell. You do directly determine what you charge, but some of it's determined for you by the market. So you can't charge $20 for a hamburger when somebody go down the street and get one for $6 or $7. Your quantity is what you really can't control. You can't control people coming into your business for your good or service. So especially during a pandemic like we're going through right now, filming this spring 2020, a lot of businesses are having to make some hard choices. So when we look at cost is really what you can control right now. There are two different types of cost. Total cost is your fixed cost plus your variable cost. So FC, VC is fixed costs and variable costs. What are fixed costs? Well, fixed costs are costs you must pay whether you're open or not. Some examples here would be your rent or your mortgage, depreciation, etc. It's things that you're going to be charged for your business, whether you're open or not. Those are fixed costs. Variable costs, though, are something that are directly related to the operation of your business. A variable cost, or a VC, is costs that increase as you operate your business more. So if you're a doctor's office, you have a marginal cost. So every time a patient comes in, you see a patient. If you're a restaurant, every time you make them a chicken sandwich, you incur some costs. You got to buy chicken breasts, you got to buy buns, you got pickles, whatever. You got to put it on there. So every time you sell a sandwich, there's a cost associated with it. So examples here, variable costs would be input costs, your utilities. If you're not open, you don't have your lights on, the utility bills come down, you're not using as much water, etc. The input costs would be things like what it takes to serve your clientele. So every time a car comes in an oil change, you got to put oil in. You got hourly wage is a big variable cost, and that's one of the things now when we're looking at the economy during a shutdown. One of the variable costs that you can control is hourly wage. Now, normally it's like, man, I really don't want to get rid of my people, but there are some government programs in place right now to help them and also help your business stay open. But what determines whether or not you stay open is whether or not you're covering your variable costs. Fixed costs are fixed. You can't control that. You're going to incur those costs regardless. Hopefully you have a landlord or a mortgage company that's working with you in this downturn, but you can't control fixed costs. So you don't make your decisions based on fixed costs. You make them based on variable costs. And variable costs are things like input costs, utilities, hourly wage, etc. So now the question is, hey, know when to shut down. Know when to shut down. And you know when to shut down based on two things, okay? If you are covering your variable costs, your VC, in the short run, stay open. And I'm going to show you here visually here in a second what that means. So if you're covering your variable costs, so what you need to do right now is you need to take all your costs and you need to list them out. And you need to figure out what's variable and what's fixed. What's fixed, again, is stuff you're going to have to pay whether you're open or not. It's your mortgage, it's your rent, that type of thing. Depreciation, some taxes, that type of thing. And then you need to have another column that's variable costs, and that's things that you can control. How many hours you give your people, how much inputs you buy, how many latex gloves, masks if you're in medical. What your power bill is, and then divide it by your patients, basically. And so you'll know your marginal cost is every bit of your cost that comes. So every time a customer comes through that door, what does it cost you? Because if they're not coming through that door, you don't incur that cost. So it's all about variable costs. So first, again, if you are covering your variable costs in the short run, stay open. Okay, absolutely stay open. Secondly, if you are not covering your variable costs in the short run, close, because variable costs go up as you operate more and more. My dad always told me, he said, if you find yourself in a hole and you're trying to get out, first step, put down the shovel. All right, so that's what we're talking about here in terms of business, whether they should close or not. So I'm going to adjust the camera just a little bit. So let's look at this visually. Let's see if this can help. So when operating at a loss, now ideally here we're dealing with profit, but right now revenues are down. You're gonna be operating at a loss. All right, that's not really, you can't really avoid that. The question is how long and when should I stop operating at a loss? I've tried to break this down. Now, this is like 2-3 chapters worth of economics here, and I'm trying to break it down into 2 visuals. So bear with me here for a second. Basically, when you're looking at profit or loss, you have 2 things to consider, all right? You have costs, okay, which are going to be this box, and you have revenue, which is going to be this box, okay? Right now, your cost exceeds your revenue, so you're operating at a loss, all right? And that's hey, you gotta, the biggest thing about leadership in business is not necessarily how you lead and how you react when times are good. It's when times are not so good that really separate the successful and the unsuccessful, the successful and the uber successful. Okay, so your costs again are made up of 2 things: fixed costs FC and variable costs VC. So assuming you know the totals for your FC and your VC, and some of you guys need to get on that right now. And you know your revenues, what you can make, and you may have to do some loose estimates because it's not like a normal operating opportunity, but we probably have enough data to go on right now that you're going to see X number of customers in the next week. All right. Let's say this is the money we could make. Okay. Highlighted in green here, this box, that's the revenue we could bring in. That's our price times quantity. This is our fixed cost. This is our variable cost. Why would I stay open? Well, look at this. Your fixed costs, you're going to have to pay either way. This amount right here, you're going to have to pay either way. Your variable costs are costs you only have to pay if you're open. Well, look here, you're covering your variable costs. Your revenues come across right here. So why would I stay open? Well, if you don't stay open, your fixed costs are costs you have to pay either way. All right, like your rent, your mortgage, that type of thing. Okay? Look here, by staying open, I pay this much of my fixed costs. Okay? So I pay my variable cost plus some of my fixed costs. So I have now a choice. Do I shut down and take this whole fixed cost as a loss, or do I stay open and minimize my loss by paying my variable cost plus this much of my fixed cost? Even though I'm operating at a loss, it's a smaller loss. So it basically comes down to the size of the loss if I'm closed is bigger than the size of the loss if I'm open. Thus, I stay open. Okay, now you're going to have to crunch some numbers to figure out what these 2 columns are. So that's, one possible outcome you can have when you do this. Let me lower the camera. Now, all right, here's the other scenario. Okay, close if you can't cover your variable costs. What does this mean? This box is your cost. This box is your revenues, all right? Again, we're kind of doing all this on the back of an envelope, but this is better than just guessing, right? Figure out what revenue you can make in the next week, all right? And then compare it to your costs over the next week, your total cost, and divide those costs into whether they're variable costs and fixed costs. In this scenario, you can see that I'm operating with this revenue and this much cost. This right here, the bigger part, is my variable cost. That's cost I can control. That's a spigot I can turn off. I can turn off the power. I can quit buying materials to make sandwiches. I can quit paying people hourly wages, that type of thing. Okay? What you see here is my fixed cost. This right here, I have to pay either way. Your fixed cost, you got to pay either way, and it's this amount right here. Now, different businesses have different cost structures, okay? Some people are very, very fixed costs and, a little bit of variable costs. A lot of people are almost minimal overhead and huge amounts of variable costs. This is that scenario where you have very little overhead and a lot of variable costs. Take your revenues, come over here. I'm covering this much variable cost. Hey, that's great, but guess what? If I shut down, all this variable cost goes away. All right, and my loss is only here. If I keep operating every day I'm open, every week, however timeline you want to do here, I'm inheriting this much more cost by staying open. So my loss is actually bigger by being open. Okay, you're gonna have a loss either way. All right, strange times, right? My loss is actually bigger by being open than it would if I closed. So your loss if open, all right, is greater than your loss if closed. You should close. All right. So all this boils down to we've got to know our numbers. All right. I always tell my students that when people think business, they think profit, and businesses have to be obsessed with profit. You know what a good business is obsessed with? Cost. Number one, knowing them. Number two, minimizing them and understanding concepts like this that can make data-based informed decisions. All right. Small businesses, I love you. You're over 90% of the jobs in the economy. If I can help you, you just reach out. All right. We can break these things down by data. You got to have good data. You just need to be obsessed right now with your costs. All right. Look at those costs, figure out what's fixed, what's variable, and then use these rules to make informed decisions. Praying for you. Take care.